Hey, what is up, everybody? It's Tuesday afternoon, so welcome to the Mental Health Happy Hour. I'm JR from Not Weird, Just Autistic. With me is Jason, the bipolar DM. What's up?
What's up?
And today we got a great topic, one that you and I have talked about on several occasions. It's mental health and medical marijuana. So we're just going to bring Stephen right in from Elevate Holistics. How you doing?
What's up? How's it going? Happy to be here.
Hey, we're very happy to have you. And I think the first thing we got to do because, and you know this, Stephen, especially with a topic like this, you're always going to have the haters. And
No
so
doubt.
I think it's really important right up front to say that there is a difference between medical marijuana and street marijuana,
Yes,
and that you should only consume medical marijuana under the guidance of a licensed physician.
absolutely.
Fair
Yeah,
enough?
yeah. Fair enough. I mean, I think that the biggest thing, so much flour is being moved down the country from medical markets. It's hard to really draw much of a difference in flour. But when you think about the regulations for molds, chemicals, fertilizers, I mean, you never know what you're consuming on the street and where that came from.
Right, and that's what I meant by that is that everything is regulated in the medical market.
Right.
You know what's being
Yeah,
fed to
you
that
you know
plant.
what you're
You
getting.
know what's going on that plant.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, I think the bigger thing is carts. What's going into those cartridges, what's going into the edibles. And I think a lot of people, as you see the growth in those products, I mean, that's really the big thing. I mean,
Especially with the danger with ethanol now being mixed with so many products, so it's really dangerous when you don't know your source or you're getting this stuff from.
right.
Yeah, and the other thing I think to really point out too is that when you are using medical marijuana, you always want to start dosing small and work your way up to where you feel you need to be. And medical marijuana is really about helping pain and anxiety and other kinds of problems that we'll get into, and not just being Jeff Spicoli.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things that people aren't taking into account, as they're buying on the street, regardless of the quality, is if you're actually trying to use cannabis as a medicine, then the medicine at dispensaries, you're going to be able to help, find help with dosing and also products that have other cannabinoids that you just don't know what is in the street, even from the medicinal side. So that, just as like we were talking about having a cartridge that's half CBD, half THC, the effects there are totally different than a completely THC pen. And what are you looking for? How do you then verify what the products are, look at the labels, and almost test to see what's going to give you the end result? And that has really only come about even in the medical cannabis industry the last couple of years. I mean, it wasn't 4 years ago you couldn't even find mixes of other cannabinoids in things. I mean, some people don't even need THC. If you're struggling with sleep, you can get some CBN and CBG now, or CBD and CBN, as opposed to 30% THC plant, which oftentimes makes anxiety worse for people that are
Oh,
suffering.
absolutely. And you know what? I mean, I've got a legal CBD shop within a couple miles of my house, and I go there and get flour. I get some pre rolls, and there are times that the CBD is just what I need.
It's perfect. People don't think about all the additional cannabinoids within the plant and what they do for you. And that's what I'm most excited about, the medical markets coming around, especially in Missouri. Missouri is is a wonderful market for product availability, and it's really only been online for a month. I mean, a year. Sorry.
Yeah,
I mean, when you look at the
Yeah, what
products,
barely.
about
even
the
in like Louisiana, or not Louisiana, I mean, Louisiana, sure, but even Illinois, I mean, vast differences in product quality and also pricing. I mean, the Missouri market might not be as good as, say, like Seattle because it's been around for 10 years, but it's quickly approaching a very medically focused industry. And that's something we should all be proud of.
yeah,
Yeah,
one thing
and
I
I
have
know at first.
noticed.
One,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to say one thing I did notice as far as pricing goes is the price on a lot of it is fairly reasonable versus like a huge markup or anything like that. And so versus what you can get on the street. And so when if people say, "Oh, well, I don't want to do it because of the cost," that's bogus. Because the cost is actually rather reasonable at a dispensary, and the additional thing is knowledge that many of these dispensaries have about particular strains, such as I'm having back pain. Okay, well, this one's very better for that. I'm having problems with insomnia. Okay, this one's going to do better than that. I'm having problems, A, B, C, And
Yeah.
so those are some of the benefits of going through a dispensary is that, you have somebody who's knowledgeable about particular strains and their applications, correctly.
Yeah. Stephen, and you mentioned Seattle earlier, so I know you kind of know, a little history of the California, Washington, Oregon early days.
Yeah.
And it's, from what I hear, it's still this way in California. You go into a dispensary and it's got the bud tenders, as they call them, are girls with large breasts and wife beater tank tops that know nothing about the product. Well, I'm sorry. If I want to look at boobs, I got lots of places on the internet I can go look at boobs.
Sure.
If I'm coming in and I've got, for, personally, I've got arthritis in most of my joints, and I've got social anxiety like you can't believe. So when I'm going in to talk to somebody about what my medical needs are and what would work best, that's not the kind of person I want to be getting my advice from.
Yeah.
And,
No,
and the thing I'm noticing now in Missouri, though, is that people know what they're talking about.
a lot more so than recreational focused markets. I think so much of the business. Unfortunately, you look at Illinois, for example, their recreational market has taken over their medical. And while the medical program is continuing to grow, you look at the dispensaries that they opened in medical in 2016, they're stuck behind warehouses. You can't even see them. They can't have signs. Those are the people that are actually knowledgeable. But you look at the recreational dispensaries that are going in, they're beautiful storefronts, almost
Oh
mall.
yeah,
I mean, they're beautiful, right? But you look at the clientele, you look at who are the people that are sitting there representing the industry as a whole. You get people that will go into a dispensary, even in Missouri, though. You get some old guy who's like, I suffer from this. He's been, a rural Missouri citizen. Could be working in agriculture, could be working in manual labor, could be a veteran, and they're like, I haven't consumed this stuff in 30 years, and it's not your dad's weed anymore, right? I mean, it's this stuff. And for, my brand ambassador team literally just saw someone last week at dispensary say to this person I'm talking about, this profile, here, take home a dab rig.
nice.
Like that might be good, but people are also looking at solving these problems from the dispensary person's tolerance level a lot of times. And you're like, well, should their first entrance to cannabis again be, some dabs? I mean, maybe.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy.
to explain real quick, dabs, that's very, 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 very concentrated resin.
I mean, it's pure cannabinoid, whatever you're getting out of the CO2 machine. Hopefully it's CO2, super critical. But you look at that and you're like, I wouldn't want my grandpa taking a dab. I'd want him having like a half THC, half CBD,
Oh no.
or some edibles. Something that's a lot more. You can control that. I mean, you see young people today. I mean, the fastest demographic of cannabis that's growing right now is women in their 30s and 40s, and then baby boomers. And you look at people who are going to get something, right? And they're like, you should probably start with like 2.5 to 7.5 milligrams of an edible. That's a whole lot different than being like, oh yeah, take a couple.
Yeah, okay, so I'm 56, and when it comes to the generations, there's always a couple of years floating around. Depending on which list you look at, I'm either like the last year of the baby boomers or the first couple of years of Gen X.
Yep.
I look at myself as the Gen X, not the baby boomer, but but yeah, no, you're right. I'm seeing people in their 60s and their 70s that are going into and coming out of dispensaries.
Yeah, you look at Oklahoma and you compare the Oklahoma market to a bunch of really any other market. Oklahoma has a huge veteran population and an aging population, primarily out in the rural parts of the country. And they had 400,000 cards almost. That's almost 10% of the entire population of the state has a card.
Wow.
And are able to go get this product, get this medicine. And it took a lot of education and a lot of bad experiences. I mean, we're on the front line. I mean, we've certified over 37,000 patients for medical cannabis in our 2.5 years of existence. So we've seen everything. People with great stories, terrible stories, trying it again. My daughter was able to sleep again, so I'm trying it. And it really is that population. Our average customer age is almost 50.
Wow.
Yeah, I had
And we're on that.
I had actually
we're on
gotten
that.
my yeah, I actually got mine through Elevate, and how you had it set up. It was great. Did it all online through my cell phone. Talked to the doc, and everything like that, and the paperwork was submitted really easy. And the turnaround with state was a lot faster than what state said was going to be, and so I think we got it in half the time. But
What was the turnaround from submission to
a
approval?
week, I think I got it in 2 to 3.
Yeah.
Hey, what's
At the
up?
state level, but I think they just kind of. I think states finally gotten their shit together that they got us working to where now they can get you in a couple days instead of a couple weeks.
Good.
Yeah. So,
And
Stu, tell us
and the
about.
process was seamless too.
Yeah. Thank you, man. We're trying hard, trying to improve every day.
Yeah, Stu. So, tell us about Elevate and exactly who you guys are and what you do for people.
Yes, I mean, Elevate currently in its current form is, we help patients get medical cannabis cards all online. I mean, that's the simplest way to put, what we do as a business. Our aspiration is to help 1 million people live a more natural way, of life. So that's going to be cannabis as a medicine. That's going to be, anything to help reduce their pharmaceutical intake. And so that's oftentimes, that can even just be vitamins, minerals, herbs that we're adding full e-commerce functionality right now. That's gut testing, allergy testing. How does it affect your diet? So that's really where we're trying to move to as we look at a much more holistic way of living. What does it mean if you do have a gluten intolerance? How does that affect your mental health as well? And we're also adding. We're scoping out how to add mental health services. So we had a therapist or a counselor available in the past. No one really wanted it. So we're continuing to try to redefine digital health in a more natural way of living lens, a holistic lens. And so we started with cannabis. Soon we added hormones for people that like delivery testosterone. We have a diagnostic imaging business that is in Tulsa and Raleigh, Nashville, soon to be Kansas City. And so all these things just are trying to help people live a better life.
Right. And when you say that you facilitate them getting their cards, what you really mean is you're connecting them with a doctor who can ask the questions, do the paperwork, send in the okay.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we have, we're more of a platform, so we're kind of the middleware between physicians who want to provide cannabis cards for one reason or another, and then patients who want access to the medical markets.
Right.
So we have about a dozen doctors on staff that are typically hospitalists, cardiologists, anesthesiologists, internal medicine physicians, all across the board in terms of specialties.
Mm-hmm.
And they sit at home, they log into their platform. We've built our entire technology suite from the ground up, whether that, from our record keeping to the physician portal. The only thing that we haven't built is the telemedicine instance itself, because there's so many of them out there. Why would we have to reinvent the wheel there? So, we've developed all this tech to support physicians and support patients to help them easily get those cards. And so now we're at about 20 employees, including marketing. Patient support is the bulk of our organization. Designers, developers, it's really are more contractors. And so we have 11 people that do, the only thing they do is sit here and help patients from start to finish.
And that is awesome. Now, when we're talking about mental health, we know we got stuff like anxiety, ADHD. What other mental health or developmental disability type conditions do you think that medical marijuana or the CBD could really help?
Lots of neurological disorders, seizures, really big there. When we look at some of the mental health, we see, my brother's bipolar. and cannabis really helped him get off of his medications. He was on Abilify, Zoloft, of several different things as he was going through his, treatment with mental, his journey, if you would say, of mental health. And so, for him having that cannabis, I mean, now he doesn't take anything and hardly even consumes cannabis, but it was a good bridge to help him kind of sort out this journey. So bipolar, I think what's interesting there, what makes things really difficult for us is how severe is it, for this exact condition, bipolar. And so our doctors have to have, ask good questions, figure out, how recent is your last like big episode? What are you going to be consuming, as we think it does make a big difference, the products. What are the chances of a psychotic or psychosis, state of psychosis,
Sure.
and THC is going to have a big impact there, as opposed to some CBD. So you have to be much more careful as you look at that. PTSD. I mean, we serve veterans with PTSD all day. So, I mean, anxiety, bipolar, PTSD, depression, and then it's ever more important, what is your product mix? What are you consuming? How, where, and really why as well. I mean, I think that so much people are using cannabis as a Band-Aid when, if you had a good therapist to kind of talk through some of this stuff too, you might not need it as much. And how do you start to approach that? Therapy is always touch and go, but I think these days it is getting more and more prominent, more and more popular for people to be able to talk about mental health openly and honestly. And as we remove the stigma around it and the stigma around cannabis, I mean, it all works together. But it's become, when you're looking at mental health, your product mix is key to your
Absolutely. I mean, you've got all these things like, I mean, you just, mentioned Abilify, Zoloft, all these really scary names out there. And if you can find something, whether it be the medical marijuana or just the CBD or a combination thereof, I think that something natural is way better for you in the long run.
Yeah, and you look at, there's a therapist in St. Louis named Michael Rose, and what he's starting to do is have patients that will consume cannabis like on calls with him, just like you have trip sitters, right, for ketamine or for psilocybin or whatever. And so if a patient wants to sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to hit my pen in therapy, that's cool. And so he's working through these experiences with people now using cannabis as a medicine, which is amazing. I think we should see more of that. And there was a guy in Kansas City doing something similar, right? And so how do you start to now incorporate these different disciplines and different practices to get the output that we're looking for, which is a more healthy way of living?
Yeah. Yeah. And, again, I think it just like with your medications, with the Zolofts and Abilifys, you're going to take time to find the right cocktail that what's going to work for you. It's kind of the same thing, with me, with my autism, I sometimes just have these little kind of creative breakdowns, where I get writer's block like crazy. And over the years, I found this strain, a sativa strain, Trainwreck, to be really, really good. Well, I just now found it in Branson 2 weeks ago for the first time in Missouri.
That's good news.
Yeah. So, if you find, and again, every strain from every grower is going to be a little bit different, but it's going to basically be the same, more or less. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think what's most important is you're looking at what are the terpene profiles, and is the provider giving those things. Like Illicit is really good at providing terpene profiles. I'm not sure about some of the rest of the grows. I don't know if Greenlight's doing that. I imagine
they are actually
good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
so,
they're,
I think
they're very thorough, very professional.
Every label that comes out of Greenlight has the terpenes listed, the CBD percentage, THC percentage. Yeah, no, you need a microscope to read it,
right?
But they're there,
yeah, especially for the pens, or the blunts, the containers. The funny thing to me is the containers that they dispense in, like glass jars, metal tubes, and stuff like that. Things that are not cheap. And it's just like, is this something that's been regulated in, or is it just something that's being figured into the cost?
Both.
both.
Yeah.
I kind of figured the government had to have their hand in something, had their finger in something about the product how it was, but it was just it was me. I got these jars. It's like I just throw them away, but
Yeah, I mean,
but
you
I to
it's
recycle them or something.
it's crazy. I mean, you go to Seattle, like, I bring up Seattle again, or California, it's bags, or it's,
Yeah.
little plastic clear containers. And I think that's more the rec side of it, where you look at Missouri, they have to be in opaque containers. And they're all choosing really nice. I mean, proper, it's basically metal containers. You're like,
Oh yeah.
this beautiful packaging. A lot of that is regulation and also built into the cost for some of the brands, right? Like who would you consider is more of the discount? Proper, if proper is the high end, is the discount C4? Maybe, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'm
Probably.
just throwing it out.
Yeah,
So do they
or
have similar?
yeah,
Do they have similar quality packaging as, say, a proper?
yeah.
Yeah.
Across the board. I mean, sometimes they come in the cellophane, metal pouches, but for them, like if they're budlets, but for the most part, they've always been thick jars, just
Mm-hmm.
like glass
Yeah.
or metal containers.
The only thing I've ever gotten in those, plastic, what I call the plastic medicine bottles with a flip top, is shake.
Oh yeah,
You'd think they'd have like a recycle program. Like if
You
you're gonna
would
say, why
think.
don't they
oh
reuse some of
yeah,
that stuff?
like the black, yeah, like the bags they service it. A thick black bag. It's a plastic bag that's got a super zipper on it that arthritis you can't open.
Well, it also keeps the
And
smell in too.
yeah, but I got a dozen. I got these things. It's like I hate to just like to, send them back or something like that if that was possible.
Yeah.
How
So-
many how many times have you all had trouble opening those packages? Because I know I felt like I think this package is smarter than I am.
Okay. Well, again, keep in mind, I said I've
yeah,
got,
my
got arthritis in
universal,
most of my fingers. So
Yeah, I have my universal key.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so we were talking before the show, and I believe you said you're now in 7 states. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The way things are going, in the different states with the laws, do you expect any more states to come on in the next 2-3 years?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's happening fast. It's really weird. It's like cannabis legislation picks up steam in the federal level, and then it loses steam, and then it picks up some steam, and then they like rip a component out, and that one picks up some steam. Before Biden was going in, he was like, we're going to legalize this stuff, and then they're like, yeah, maybe. And then maybe the Banking Act is going to pass. When before the Banking Act was a sure thing. Now that's a
Right.
maybe. And the individual states, though, that's really picking up. I mean, Alabama just released, some a medical cannabis program for oils only, and tends to be the stage in the conservative states. You're seeing Missouri just jumped out ahead of it. Oklahoma jumped out ahead of it. Georgia is tinctures. Louisiana just got flower. Mississippi, they will become hell or high water. They're going to have medical cannabis in that state. I mean, that was turned around by the Supreme Court. Now it's going back to the governor, and he's like, no. And the people they will have medical cannabis quickly.
The one state that we really, see a lot of scary stuff with based on where we live is Arkansas.
Oh,
Where
Yep.
Arkansas is just, it's so hard to get a card.
man, you're telling me. I mean, we certified several hundred people there, and then they ended the telemedicine thing. And then what was crazy is they tried to make it a part of this bill that the only way that PTSD could get a medical card, as a qualifying diagnosis was if they if they drove to a psychiatrist's office, didn't matter what, and had to get it from a psychiatrist, which is crazy because they only live in Round Rock and maybe Bentonville. There's a couple areas that a psychiatrist is going to be. Well, if you're out in the middle of nowhere,
Right.
you're going to drive 2 hours to go get this thing, and it's just a massive roadblock, right? I mean, this should be opened up freely for veterans who are injured and serve this country. I mean, it's just crazy to me that was the thing that they tried to do. And then they passed an amendment for it to be telemedicine across the board, but because they passed an act, But because they didn't amend the original amendment in the Constitution, it was at conflict, and then the Constitution won out. So then they said, okay, well, we'll just rewrite this so it's renewals only. And we're like, thank goodness. But still, a program can't grow nearly as fast, especially in Arkansas, where there's a monopoly on the product, if people can't get their cards online.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't Florida where there's major towns almost every few hours. So how do you know, Florida's renewals only, Utah's renewals only, but Florida's going to pass something soon to where it's, you know, even new appointments can be telemedicine. But Arkansas was a disaster. That was a disaster for us. But now we're back. We're renewing patients down there, working with dispensaries. That was a disaster.
Well, Jason is a vet with PTSD, and we have a friend who's a vet with PTSD who lives in Arkansas, just over the border from Missouri.
Yes, sir.
And he's told us so many horror stories.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. You know, the VA chirps about, you know, they're going to allow some cannabis stuff, and then they don't, and then you're going to have, you know, allow the VA to, like, you know, dispense even, which it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, that won't. Well, first of all, before anything changes in the VA, it has to change in the federal government. When the federal government okays it, eventually the VA will come online with cannabis, stuff like that. But really, that's where it all begins, is at the federal level with the legalization of cannabis. And once that hurdle's over with, then the VA will start taking away the blacklist, which is if you've used cannabis, you're blacklisted from narcotics.
Yep.
So you're taking, you know, hopefully they'll take that away. And
man, we see that. We see that all the time.
Yeah.
You know, we get on calls with patients, and they're like, I don't want to lose this, so I can't get my medical card. And it's like, well, one, they can't find out unless you tell them, you know, or people are at risk right now for losing their pain doctors.
And the thing about it is your psychiatric record's not secured. My primary care physician found out through my records that I had used cannabis, and that's why he cut me off of pain pills for my back. So even your psychiatric records are not, like, compartmentalized, so that the other departments can't get into them.
Wait, can you tell me more on that?
Well, what it is that, you know, normally you would think that if you're going to a psychiatrist, everything's all enshrouded in a bubble and nobody else can see it without a HIPAA. Well, the thing about the VA is because everything's interconnected, that exists. So the doc can look up, or just about anybody, if they want to, can go look up my psychiatric records, notes, and say, doc says, oh, I admitted to using cannabis. Doc sees that, says, I'm sorry, it's on your records now that you use cannabis because you admitted it during therapy that you had to, and you know, and then now you're shit listed on anything here. But not every VA is like this. Now that's the thing about this. That's the thing that's also screwed up. Not every VA is like this. The one I'm dealing with here, and they're actually out of Arkansas. But it's a culture that's embedded into governments when it comes to cannabis. Is the overall message there is that before we can change anything, we got to change the law. Before we clean up.
You know, you'd think that the government would be like, okay, let's change this and run a test, and we're going to have it to where the VA can dispense this and they'd be able to tax it. I mean, that would be like the fastest way to get a study done for them to see what.
Oh, hell yeah.
If it's legit, and they make more money.
So many ways.
How about just looking at north at Canada and what they've done?
Yeah, I mean, there's other countries that are doing stuff, but the government is just so stubborn in the politics of cannabis. I mean, going back to 1920, whatever, when it was first outlawed, back during the 1920s.
Yep.
That was all politics in of itself. For that had nothing to do with the danger of the plant, which was like ridiculously way less than it is nowadays.
Oh my gosh.
Well, just even in the last 10 years, the the concentration of THC and CBD into the plants has gotten off the charts.
Oh yeah, well, no,
Oh, I mean,
but also let's see. No, go
Huh?
ahead.
No, go ahead, man. You're good.
I was gonna say now, so
The I guess you call them the old heads. The growers of the '90s in California and out west. Really, I mean, they just didn't know what they didn't know. And so when you look at now like a Proper there in Missouri, their old CEO actually got some seeds from the Middle East, like some old world, and trying to figure out like what are the profiles of this plant that hasn't been bred out for only THC for the last 20 years, 30 years.
yeah.
Like what is if it's in the wild, what's actually in this thing? And we don't even know. There are cannabinoids left that we don't even know about, and how do we get these back into the plant as quickly as possible? Because right now, yeah, people are just like, and this is still a thing today. People just want to go into a dispensary and say, what's the highest THC count you have? And you're like, that's just misinformation.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can, you might know about this being a veteran. Harlequin is, I'm pretty sure that's the strain. Is only like 8% THC, but it's like 10% CBD or something, and you still feel like you're a bump on a log. I mean, if you're going there for chronic pain or PTSD and you want something that makes you feel great, that is some. I think it's an older strain too, right?
Sounds right. That sounds right. What you said.
It's low THC, high CBD, and it feels great. And it's just misinformation that people think that they need to go out and just find 28%, THC flower. You're like, that's. Shoot, like that. Give me
what? If that's what you're going to do, then you're just looking to be Jeff Spicoli. You're looking to be sitting there just so stoned that you're banging your Vans on your head.
It's like, where's the food? I mean, that's
that's not using your medicine the right way.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's what. When we look to the future again, that's what's so exciting. And that's what some of the bud tenders in Missouri understand. That's what, when we look at education, what we're trying to do for people, we have a CBD consultation, holistic health consultation. We'll write up our interpretation of what we think you should go consume at a dispensary. We work with the cannabis care team. Do y'all know who April Hatch is, cannabis care team? I mean, she's like,
I know the name.
I mean, they're amazing, right? I mean, she went up and learned with the doctor in Maine who came up with the healer certification, right? Who's like the standard for cannabinoid education right now, for nurses and stuff. I mean, she is helping people, through treatment journals and, just 30-minute consults. Like, what are you experiencing? What are you trying to get? And helping people see that, right? I mean, we have a good chance right now to sit here and work with this stigma to reduce the stigma of cannabis by saying, don't go in and get this product that's going to make you, feel sometimes kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Start here, start there. But it's the first time that, when you think about, people that try alcohol for the first time, if they get, wildly inebriated, they might not want to drink again. It makes sense.
Right.
Sick and all these things. Well, how do we stop that from happening with cannabis, which is like the grandpa getting a dab rig?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Just staring at the wall for 3 hours.
What is going on?
Yeah. So, why don't you explain a little bit, if you could, Stephen, about the different types of medical marijuana, for example, the sativas and the indicas, and how they affect you and what types of things in general they're good for.
Yeah, I wish I was more educated on a lot of the details of, say, the terpenes. I mean, that's really what we're getting after here. We're not trying to. Indica and sativa has been so bred and hybridized that really what people need to be going and asking about is, what are the terpenes here that are going to get me my desired effect? A sativa tends to have certain type of terpenes, and an indica tends to have certain type of terpenes.
Correct.
And so, if you're looking for the high, for instance, that's going to feel cerebral and active, you're going to go for like a limonene, a pinene, those citrusy, the bright sensations, right? When you smell it, there's a saying, the nose knows. And so if you go smell something and you're like, ooh, then you probably shouldn't be smoking it, or consuming it. And so it really is And then also the cannabinoids, right? Like CBG or CBN is great for sleep. CBG is great for inflammation. THC helps so much with appetite. And so what are we looking at from a health condition? And then what's the desired effect and the impact? And what am I trying to do on it? And those are the conversations that need to be had with the dispensary staff, our physicians. What's crazy is most doctors don't even know this stuff. Most doctors, like the doctors never even learn about the endocannabinoid system in the body, right. How that affects, the assumption now is that actually regulates the rest of our systems, if you will, right? So people that have, if you have, foods used to have, because you have phytocannabinoids, right? Like even meat, our plants and veggies used to have these things, and our body would need the phytocannabinoids so that our endocannabinoid system was operating effectively to then regulate things like mood, anxiety,
right.
Those general, just moods. And so as we've gotten away from that, we have to augment it now with more phytocannabinoids, primarily in cannabis, and understanding what is available on the market. And so our doctors, in med school, they don't even know about this. They're having to go get the healer certification. They're having to go get state continuing education courses, because even physicians might not know about this stuff. And they have to go do continued education, which is just crazy to me. So even a lot of times our physicians, we sit here and point our patients to the cannabis care team. We point them to additional resources online. We have blogs on terpenes and desired effects and what they're going to get out of it. Which is, I can act like I know most of these things, just like our physicians don't, but we connect people with the resources so they
Exactly.
Exactly. And we can't stress enough, though, that indica and sativa is almost a fallacy at this point. And people need to educate themselves on what are the terpenes they're looking for, because in the flavonoids, right, the terpenes are what actually give us the sensations.
Right.
And so what are we looking to do?
And when we're talking sensations, we're talking about the lessened anxiety, the pain relief, the ability to sleep, things like that, correct?
Absolutely. Exactly. Absolutely. And even, now like solves. People are coming around. I was just talking to one of my friends last night. She was saying that she has a CBD solve that she can put on her back and her knee, and it makes a huge difference. And that's I didn't even need THC in that. People just assume. So there's just a lot of information out there, and really, finding the bud tenders that you're going to trust and ask them a few pointed questions. What is melanine and what does it do for you? Pinene, what does it do for you? What are the effects? And a lot of these dispensaries even have the charts, of like the wheels of the terpenes, and just look at it and ask good questions. That's
the colored wheels of terpenes.
Yeah.
Right. I wish I knew more. I know that for me, when I go smell product, I like more of the sativa stuff. I like the smell of the pine sols, the citrus, the blueberries, the juicy fruits.
Yeah.
That's what my body wants more, as opposed to like the OGs with like the cheesy smells, or you can definitely smell a big difference when something's pure.
Pumpkin blue cheese.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I found that I will keep sometimes 2 or 3 different things based on what I need. Like I was in a car accident a couple weeks ago. My left knee feels like I want to amputate it right now. So
get you some relief, brother.
But that's what I'm saying. So I've been using something different than what I normally would, because I've got that specific pain.
Right.
That I'm trying to deal with.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless at this point. It's crazy. 10 years ago, people weren't even 5 years ago, a couple years ago. I don't remember ever being able to go to Colorado, even the last couple of years, and seeing terpene profiles on recreational products. This is so new. People are really just getting around to it.
Yeah. Well, and I think one good thing about Missouri in that way is that they were CBD legal a couple of years before they became medical marijuana legal.
Right.
So they got, a little bit into that before.
Yeah, I think they all modeled their, and they looked at how some and other states that did, and modeled. There's a lot for the states that did it when they decided how they were going to implement it. I know the bill for when it went through vote was a really hard fought battle, and every T crossed, every I dotted on that bill, so that it would hold up to after being signed. The litigation stuff.
Yeah.
So Missouri, was that a referendum, or was that voted on by the state assembly?
It was a referendum. We was voted on by the people.
So was
Yeah,
Oklahoma.
had
The lawmakers
and
didn't expect it.
Yeah, and they got the signatures pretty quickly. I mean, solid, number. And then I think, wasn't sure, but I think there was a second bill that was introduced at the same time. It was like Prop C, and it was
Yes.
like completely opposite end that would have messed everything up, and it tricked a lot of people into voting for the wrong marijuana bill. And but we to pass it despite shenanigans.
As Stephen, what it was is one bill had a lot of restrictions. One bill didn't have as many restrictions. But you know how they do political ads on TV. They're getting everybody flipped around on what's what.
Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did we? I mean, there was a time.
Blowing.
There was a time when, luckily, I mean, COVID saved. I think COVID kind of saved the program. There was a House rep who's a physician who had basically started communicating with. You remember the Green? There's Green Health Doc. That was one of the first telemedicines in Missouri. And then there was the Green Health Clinics or the Green Clinics. I can't remember what they were called exactly. Remember, but she set up tons, all over the place, and they're certifying brick and mortar. And then because telemedicine was driving the price down, it just makes sense. The market more effective,
Sure.
the price down.
Right.
They basically, she went under and then was trying to get the state doctor, this Republican doctor out of Kansas City, to make telemedicine illegal. And they stuck this telemedicine. It was just a couple sentences in this bill, and it was the edibles bill. If you remember back in 2020, it was spring of 2020. There was an edibles bill talking about, it can't be, making it look like it's desserts for kids.
Right.
And that kind of stuff. And they snuck this little thing in about telemedicine, and it was going to pass, but then COVID happened, and then it just didn't. It just went away. And I think that had a major difference in the success of the market in Missouri. Otherwise, it'd have been like in Arkansas. Even though Arkansas's products are getting a lot better now, they still don't even have 100,000 people with cards, and Missouri is basically at 2,000. So I mean, that really basically saved the program in a big way.
It did a lot for across the board. Internet, the pandemic was like the best thing that happened to the internet, whether it's DoorDash or Amazon or places where you can have your weed delivered to your house. It's been great. And telemedicine is one of the things where it was there. It was not being used much as it could have been, and when it was needed, it really shown that they could be a lot more viable way of conducting this than the traditional way.
Yeah, what was so flabbergasted? I was just so incredibly amazed. I'm continually surprised, and I feel like I get played every time I'm surprised at politicians, because Missouri has made it very clear that telemedicine is a key part of being able to service their veterans and Medicare population, especially in the state. About the way that healthcare and billing and through Medicare has been run the last 10 years or so. And so they said telemedicine is going to be crucial for the state infrastructure, and then they're going to make it illegal for cannabis only. And you're like, well, that makes no sense. And then COVID happened, and it basically propelled everything 20 years. It feels like maybe 5 years in all actuality. Time moves so fast. But now you're able to deliver things like hormones and testosterone and any medications to your house. I mean, it's amazing what can be done now through online, and it's getting better and better.
Yeah.
Talk about telemedicine. My health insurance company, just as of January 1st, is not allowing telehealth visits with psychologists or psychiatrists anymore. Well, that's a problem for me because my psychologist isn't doing inpatient appointments.
What do you do?
Find another one.
But that's just the thing about it is the you don't know why they do some things, and it comes down to money for some stupid reason or
Yeah.
Whatnot. But
Yeah.
Man, so do y'all think that there's an opportunity? Do you think that there's an opportunity for someone like an Elevate to move into more of mental health capacity, product set, function, whatever that might
I've
be,
seen,
especially.
yeah, especially if you're doing the same model as you're doing now, which is being the middle person to connect somebody to a licensed mental health professional. There's a couple other companies that are doing it right now. They're advertising heavily on Facebook. So I think it is other people as an emerging market. I think it's something much worth looking into of getting into the mental health of this.
And for you all, do you see cannabis as an essential part of your program? As in, if you do you see it as pertinent? And I know you've working with a psychologist for a while, and so do you feel like it's something that is mandatory and you're just going to take also because you enjoy, or is there also an opportunity to help people really not even consume anything with proper mental health coaching and
Yeah.
therapy sessions? I don't know. I'm just
I
talking.
think everybody is different.
Yeah.
Everybody is different. So there's some people that can go the just talk psychology kind of route. There's some people that are going to need a little bit of that, a little bit of the CBD, the cannabis, and some they're going to need a little bit of medication and the talk and the cannabis. It's just really going to depend on the person.
Yeah, it's like personally, like with me, I'm doing the cocktail medication and cannabis together, and so far, I've had any interactions with the two, and they've actually complemented each other very well. So, as I always say, is a tool. It is not a bullet. It's not going to cure anything. It's just one many tools to have in a toolbox. Cannabis is another tool. Cannabis alone is not going to cure your problems, especially if your problems are psychological. You're going to have to do more than just one tool. You may have to go on medication for a short time or a lifetime. You probably should talk to somebody and do regular psychotherapy. All these things, meditation, all this stuff. Diet, exercise, all of this all feeds together into a bigger picture of your mental and physical health. And I think cannabis is a valuable tool among many.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I totally agree. That's what we're going for. Have you two ever gotten like a gut biome test and a foodology test and see what kind of reactions you're having from a dietary, physical perspective?
No, but that's something I've been talking to my doctor about.
And I'm in the VA. I don't even think that exists in the VA. But
the VA, they're like, "What? You want to do what?" No.
Yeah, that's witchcraft.
Yeah.
That's sad. That's actually very sad. And when you think about all the people that could impact from a holistic perspective.
Oh yeah,
Right.
I mean, especially the way the DNA works, the testing works, is it makes it so specific, especially with medications. That's one thing that could save so much time, is if they offer DNA testing for medication compatibility, in which they know, all right, from these indications, it's going to work a lot well for you. Lithium, probably not so much, so we won't even bother with that. These family drugs work great for you. This one, and so it's the latest in technology that the VA is probably not going to see for another 10 or 15 years. Is the maybe 10 years will be the DNA testing.
Yeah, you brought up DNA testing there. I just shared Strain Genie. Check that out. It's an interesting little platform. You can upload prior DNA or blood work. But essentially, it basically helps you find the best cannabis as a medicine for you based on
Interesting
how your body works, right? For a lot of people, if they have a certain enzyme in their liver, then edibles don't affect them, or in their stomach, then edibles don't affect them like people would, for a good instance, right? So that helps there. I think that's wildly interesting information to have. And then, for Everlywell there, they do a lot of at-home tests. So you can find, relatively inexpensive at-home tests. They mail it to you, you ship it back. and they get you the results. That's anything from hormones, allergies, all that. And so these are things that we want to, add into our platform, so based on like certain health conditions that you put, we want to be able to basically say, might want to check out this, we'll get your blood work done, especially for the mental health practice. We kind of want to have people, as soon as they walk in the door, we basically give them a blood work and a gut test. We're like, okay, here's, especially because we're telemedicine, right? We don't have the same information as some physicians. So if we can gather that info and then say, okay, this is probably a product that's going to work. This might help, because we naturally, given, my brother's experience with the medications, I mean, it was brutal. Some of those, when you find, even just finding the right cocktail of those psychiatric medications can really tear you up.
That took me 20 years. Yeah, it took 20 years for me to get it right.
It's crazy.
So,
I know.
And if I had DNA testing available to me 20 years ago, even, I mean, of course it didn't exist then, but had it, that had been 20 years of, I wouldn't have been going through all the problems I had with medication, from contraindications to side effects, bad effects, just all kinds of worries.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, Stephen, we got just a few minutes left. Why don't you tell everybody what states are you available in right now?
Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Maryland, PA, New Jersey, Virginia, Louisiana, Iowa. So those 10 we're currently serving patients. Soon to be Michigan. We'll have Connecticut, New York. Right now, Massachusetts will be a big one. I think Montana just for recreational, but I really want to do Montana so I can have a reason to travel there. So I want to do Montana for cards.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so when somebody goes to Elevate Holistics, what are they going to find? What do they need to do?
Yeah, really, there's an appointment block section on the homepage. You can choose a time. You can click book appointment. It'll take you to a page to choose your state. It's really as simple as following the path.
Yeah, and I will say I was surprised.
You just need a photo ID, right?
You need a photo ID. That's
the
easiest thing, especially. Most states, photo ID is the best way to go about it because that's the only form of identity verification you need. Otherwise, you can do like a vehicle registration plus a passport. Those are the things that you can do. But if you have an ID or a driver's license, just use that. And then as soon as you choose the appointment type, veterans and Medicare, we do the state applications for free on the back end to help, with that process.
All right.
And now even in Missouri, what's brand new for us is we automate the 8-ounce allotment appointments. So instead of having to so we make you choose 2 appointments, 2 days apart, one bill on the front end, and we do it on the back end. So we make sure that the application with Complia at the state is done the right way. So we're going to work with a lot of dispensaries to get that out there. Because as you know, the MMEs or whatever it's called, the units for edibles and concentrates are completely thrown off. They have a bent towards flour, which, okay, better for worse, whatever. No, I don't know how many people are going to consume 4 or 8 ounces of flour in a month. That's a ton. But as you look at edibles, right? Edibles, you'll max out. Give it the old college try. You'll max out on that with edibles super quick. So we just released that for Missouri.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the coolest product yet, that I've seen with any other. No other system can do that. And so, we're easily making that happen upon renewals or new appointments because there's a lot of different things for that to match up. Like you have to have 2 different doctors with the same qualifying condition, both within 30 days of each other. So we want to automate that for the people. That's the biggest thing. So you can see that appointment type right on the website as you work through the Missouri state flow.
Okay.
And we're redesigning the whole thing. So once you pay, you get in, fill out your forms, see the doctor online. And then if we do your application, great. If not, then you can, we upload your rec automatically to the state. So within, 24 hours of having your appointment, your certification's in the system, but then you need to go out and fill in the application unless we're doing it for you. So we typically have that done in about 24 hours.
And one thing I was surprised about is, when I went in to do my renewal and I was looking at appointments, I mean, there was an appointment that was 15, 20 minutes away.
Oh, yeah. Every day. Same day, all day.
Yeah. So I thought that was just awesome.
Every day, all day. Different states have different availability. Iowa's a lot less because, that's a market that only has tinctures. And so the demand's it's a lot less there.
Sure.
We're moving patients through.
So, all right. Well, hey, Stephen,
Okay.
we appreciate you having the time to spend with us today. We
Hey,
definitely
thank you
want
all.
to bring
Really
you back
enjoyed it.
and talk to you a little bit more. And hang on just a minute when we get off the air because I want to talk to you about a couple things.
Cool.
So, Jason, anything you want to say before
Yep.
we get out of here? Besides, we'll be back next week.
Well, we're going to be back next week. And remember, everyone, take your meds.
All right. Bye.